In this video, I'm going to try to demonstrate how to achieve vocals which are right up front and in your face. I'm going to do this without using any plugin or any DAW demonstration. I'm simply going to use my whiteboard. This way, you actually get to understand how to do it. So once you learn how the basics of sound works, then you can use any plugin to achieve this. On my vocal track insert plugin chain, of course, right after I do my clip gain to make sure that I've got the right signal coming in, usually about minus 18 dB and fluctuating up and down, the next thing I actually put in there is my EQ. Because personally, I like EQ before compression on vocals. The reason is that you want to get rid of some of the frequencies which are not part of the vocal range. Usually do low cut, so to get rid of all the low frequencies, and sometimes even high cut, because depending how it's actually recorded, if the microphone is had too much sibilance in there, you can get rid of some of the high frequencies. Though you might think it will actually kill some of the air and the sibilance, but I'll show you how you can actually achieve a good result, because sometimes they're just recorded too high and it could be really ear-piercing. So for me, I put EQ as a first plugin on my vocal chain. Now, for you, it may be different. It could be compression or some other plugin. Of course, as you know, there are no rules. It's up to you. As long as the final result is what you want to achieve. It doesn't matter how you achieve it, because in the end, the listener doesn't care whether you had EQ first or compression later, or compression first and EQ later. So who cares? Now that we got rid of all of the frequencies that we don't need, the next thing I add is a compressor. Now in my vocal chain, I do use multiple compressors, sometimes either the same compressor with different setting, or sometimes different type of compressor to give a different flavor or coloring that I expect for that vocal. Of course, I also use EQs again with different settings to adjust and compensate for the changes that the compressor does. Because the compressor, even though it's compressing amplitude levels, it's still changing and the sound. So we want to compensate for that. So here is a representation of my vocal. I hope you can actually see it. Hand drawn. It's got lots of peaks, lots of dynamics in there. So the first compressor, what you want to do is to have a simple taming of those amplitude, because we can use multiple compressors in series to slowly tame and control the dynamics of our vocal track. And that is the sort of the important thing. Don't expect one compressor to actually do the whole dynamic compression of a vocal in one go. You have to do it in steps. And that's part of, I guess, my way of getting a good result. As you can see in here, we've got lots of peaks. And then what we want to do is tame a little bit of it. Okay? So that they are about, the same level. Because once we have a threshold, they will try to get tamed into those levels. And what you want to do is probably a low ratio, maybe 2:1 ratio for the compressor, depending on how it's recorded, how close to the microphone it is, and the microphone proximity effect you've got. You can adjust your attack accordingly. The faster the attack, it will get rid of the quick transients, and fast transients usually means higher frequencies get eaten up as well, and they get tamed. So that's why, as I explained, you may need another EQ afterward to bring up those attenuated transient frequencies back up again. Now that we tamed all of the peaks of our signal, using, fast attack, so we capture all of the transients, making sure that there are no peaks going through, the next thing we need to concentrate is on to bringing out those lower levels. up to the same level. So then we can do that with a second compressor. And usually the second compressor settings that I normally use will have, whether if it's the same compressor plugin or a different plugin, what I normally do is to have a little bit higher ratio, maybe 4:1 or 6:1 ratio. But my attack is much, much slower. It'll be at least 40, 50, or 60 millisecond attack, because there shouldn't be any more fast transients, because they were taken care of with the first compressor. And we want to allow some of those transients to come through still, but with the makeup gain, we're going to level up all of these lower levels of signal. So making more steady. And again, my release would be slower as well. So it's releasing it slowly. So it's leveling down gently. So after our second compressor, our signal should be pretty much all level. So no real peaks. Most of the peaks are, the signal peaks that you might get, but they should be all about ending up the same level. And our lower signal levels, they should increase due to the makeup gain. So now our signal reduced dynamic range, so it comes more and more forward and in your face. But at this stage, due to dual compression that in series that we put in, now we've lost quite a few of frequencies. So I normally add a second EQ to balance it back again, to make sure that I can replace back the sibilance that might have been lost for the higher frequencies, and a little bit of air. And at the same time, I start working on removing some of the muddiness and the dullness. So by cutting some of the low mid frequencies to bring out the brightness. So I normally don't do additive, I do subtractive EQ, especially at this stage. And the only additive would be in this stage is to add a little bit of the higher frequencies to bring back the sibilance, as I mentioned. Now that we've got our vocals straight in your face and all tamed and ready to go, the next plugin that I add into my chain is another compressor. Now, depending on the genre of the music and the vocal, I tend to choose either tube emulation or a FET emulation. LA2A for the tube emulation, or the 1176, depending how aggressive I want that vocals to be. So what this last compressor does is level everything, smooth everything out as its final stage. And lastly, the last thing I add afterwards is a deesser. Whether I use the standard stock plugin as a deesser or any of the deesser plugins available, just to tame those S's, because sometimes after compression and all that dynamics that we reduced, the S's and sibilance becomes really prominent. So you need to be able to control those S's so they don't really stand out, so they're nice and smooth. And that's pretty much it. So to recap, my vocal chain usually has, once the gain staging is done, I do have an EQ to remove all the odd frequencies, my first compressor to actually get rid of all the fast transient and the peaks in a very small manner, maybe no more than 2 or 3 dB reduction of those peaks. And then I have a second compressor, maybe reducing about -6 dB, maybe sometimes more, up to -9 dB of compression, but slow attack and slow release, so that we're not losing all of those transients, but taming it into a lower dynamics of it. And followed by another EQ to shape our vocals, depending what microphone is used and the vocal. So that's up to your ears to shape it. And again, followed by either LA2A emulation or 1176 emulation, or any of those emulated plugins, analog plugins that you might have in your DAW that you can use to do the final leveling of your vocals, and finish off with a deesser, and you're ready to go. Well, I hope this helps you out, and now you know how to get really great vocals in your mix. And if you want me to demonstrate this using a vocal in my next video, comment below and I'll try to make a video demonstrating it as well. As you can see, I did not mention any plugins. It's just stock plugins. You can actually use it other than the LA2A and 1176 emulation. But again, you don't really have to use those to get a good result. Again, comment below if you do like me to make a video demonstrating it in my DAW. Till next time, as always, thanks for watching and have a great time making music. Cheerio, guys.